Welcome back, everyone. My name is David, and I'm on the ecosystem team here at Chainlink. Well, we really get to talk about the fun stuff now, VRF in art and gaming. So today we are joined by a panel of speakers who are utilizing VRF in unique and interesting ways and are really taking advantage of what can be done with verified randomness. So joining me here is Leif Erik Kleiser. He's the co-founder and CEO of Polychain Monsters. Philip Devine, who's the owner of Riveted Games, CryptoBlades, Ryan Chown, Global Media Manager of PlayDAP, and Barak Chamo, who's the co-founder of Strata Gallery. So let's dive right in. Each of you is leveraging VRF in really different ways to change the way that users interact with art and with gaming. And so, Leif, I want to start with you. When we think about traditional collectible games, we really take the rarity of the cards and the random distribution for granted. We have to trust the issuer. So talk about how VRF is changing the way that we think about and eliminate trust within collectible games.
Hey, thanks for the invitation, first of all. My name is Leif from Germany, and I'm one of the co-founders and developers at Polychain Monsters. And Polychain Monsters basically is an ecosystem built around a collection of 3D animated monsters, which are backed by NFTs. And you can get these monsters by opening on-chain booster packs, how we call it. And you can imagine it like being an on-chain equivalent to ripping these packs with, for example, trading cards in the physical world. Yeah. And always when you pull a monster from our booster packs, these monsters have different traits. For example, different horns, different color, having glitter or no glitter, having music, new music, and so on. And all these traits have different rarities. And depending on these rarities, your Polychain monster has a different value. For example, on the secondary market, where the prices for rare monsters range from a few $100 to a few $1,000, but also within our own ecosystem, where we have different collect to earn mechanisms. In the future, we'll also have different play to earn mechanisms where the value depends on the rarity of the trades. And this is also where Chainlink VRF comes into play, namely when it comes to the fair generation or the fair random generation of the trades your monsters have. Because every time when somebody opens a booster pack, we are using Chainlink VRF in the background to randomly and provably random generate these trades. And we are doing that on Polygon and using the functionality cross-chain, but that's another story, and we would need much more time for that. But the largest proof for the value that Chainlink VRF provides to us within the process is that within our community, we never had a discussion, or at least no serious discussion, about the fairness of our booster openings. And our community is quite large. We had a few 10,000 people who opened booster packs already. It can be quite critical, and we have a lot of devs, so a lot of people who actually look behind the scenes. But still, we are now in a situation where even our own community members reference to these on-chain random numbers provided by Chainlink when, for example, people had bad luck and pulled not so great monsters, or new people come into our community and question that fairness of the booster openings. And then everybody references to a Chainlink VRF, which is used in the background. And yeah, this just shows me how much Chainlink VRF or on-chain random numbers, fair on-chain random numbers, are a game changer when it comes to the trust that is needed into the issuer of collectibles. And yeah, because of that success and because Chainlink VRF is so accepted by our community, we will also use it in our upcoming Polychain Monster games for the random elements there, just because we want to have this 100% trust by the community again, and this 100% acceptance for the random elements that the games will have. So to sum it up, we are quite happy with Chainlink VRF, and we really see it as an enabler technology for our ecosystem, especially for the booster openings.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Leif. You can see how critical that is within that type of infrastructure. And Barak, I'll jump right to you. I see some art in the background there. Strata is really pushing the limits of how we interact with art. Talk about the new possibilities that VRF is bringing to the art world, and specifically how you are using randomness in what you're building.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Dave. Really happy to be here and represent Strata. So just to briefly introduce, Strata is a new kind of art gallery, and our mission really is twofold. It's to bridge digital and physical art in new and interesting ways, bringing physical and traditional artists into the NFT space, and supporting their new creations and using crypto as a new canvas by discovering new modes of interaction with audiences in different ways. The sort of moving canvases you see behind me is actually our first project that was built with VRF. It's called Whole Picture. It's a collaboration with Mexican artist Hector Falcon that transformed his cutout paintings that are physical into a digital interactive artwork and experience, and it's created in collaboration with the audience through an interactive art event. And this is where the VRF played a really crucial part. But briefly speaking about randomness, before I get to the VRF, the art and randomness have always come hand in hand, from physical and traditional art to performance that responded to things like audience and nature, to digital art that tried to leverage randomness, chance, uncertainty as a source of inspiration, as a collaborator, as a humanizing element in another very orderly and pristine canvas and platform. And we're doing the same thing. We're thinking of how can we create new and engaging and interesting experiences for our audience through the blockchain platform. In the case of Whole Picture, for example, the canvases were allocated to each buyer through time through this interactive art event. And they were a combination of what we call choice and chance. And what does that mean? The first canvas, each of the canvases is allocated through a random allocation several times per layer, and buyers can decide whether or not they lock the layer if they like it, or they wait on to the next sort of luck of the draw. And if you lock a canvas, it is no longer accessible in that layer to others. So there's an interaction here between all of the different buyers, depending on which canvas I got and decided to lock, and other people decided to lock. And it's sort of unpredictable as the canvases unfold. But for us, something that was really critical was that the random seed that sort of sparks the entire event is truly random and verifiably random. And why is that? If you use randomness in any other setting as a source for inspiration in music, for example, or a performance, or it gives you instruction for what is the next step in a painting, whether or not the randomness is verifiable is not as consequential, because the artwork still stands on its own. When the randomness dictates interaction and what each of our buyers ends up receiving, it's critical that it is random, and random in a way that is verifiable, not pseudo random or sort of pretend random, and that you can trust the source. And for that, Chainlink really solved a really critical problem for us, which is how do we build this interesting and intricate mechanic, but at the root of it is a random seed that you can trust, so that you know that your chance of getting a more rare canvas in your combination is just as unknown or unpredictable as anybody else's, and that there is no way to game the system, because contracts are public, because of the potentials and opportunities, but also restrictions of writing contracts and deploying projects on the blockchain. The VRF, Chainlink's VRF, really sits at the core of how we can guarantee to our buyers, our participants, and also to our artists that the process, the allocation, and that the NFT that you end up getting really truly is fair and unique.
Thanks so much, Barak. And it would also be interesting to see how what you've built could be even bridged into or utilized by games to have this combination of choice and randomness kind of brought into games as well. So I think there's a lot of discussions there, but we'll jump right into to Philip next. To talk a little bit about play to earn games. They've become huge, obviously, and rely heavily on randomness. Can you talk about how developers should think about randomness, and the role that VRF plays in the underlying infrastructure of what you're building?
Yeah, I think a lot of what has already been said, has summarized many parts of that well. And I think just one small part that I would add in addition is, specifically with Crypto Blades, we are a role-playing game where players can create characters and craft weapons, and those characters and weapons can actually earn them tokens, so they can, that's really effectively a play to earn mechanism using our NFTs. And so one way that we ensure that the fairness of how those NFTs are created and distributed is verifiable and is also random, so that every player has the same chance of, for example, grabbing a very rare and powerful 5-star crypto blade, for example, which is going to offer a much higher rate of earning than a lower star or a lower rarity blade. And so in that sense, it's also trusting the technology with your finances, and not just in the outcome of a game, but in the when you take a chance to make that purchase and see if that blade that you're going to draw is going to be powerful or less powerful, you want to know that it's not going to be altered by us or by any unknown third party, and of course that it would be verifiable in that sense. So I think that's probably the biggest draw from developers on that standpoint is just knowing that you're dealing with financial transactions here, and there's a lot more at stake for making sure that is both fairly random and verifiable.
Perfect, thanks, Philip. And Ryan, as we've seen, there are many different applications for VRF, and so and especially your projects, you're building many different types of games. So could you talk a bit about some of the different ways that VRF is applied across the different games that you're developing?
Yes, so for Playdat, it's not just about a singular game. We are producing multiple games, and each have their own NFT aspects, their own probabilities, their own components that players collect, earn, and use. And alongside that, we have the idea of amalgamation and upgrading these NFTs that they've earned and collected from various games. And when doing so, players are very aware of traditional odds in terms of returns and loot boxes and mechanics like that. And they're also very aware of how in the past in traditional gaming, this hasn't been truly verifiably to be fair. With VRF, we see that we can prove not just transparently, but independently, that the NFTs that you're bringing from one game to another game, merging and upgrading them, they are fairly being done. And when you get the upgrade, or perhaps you're not so lucky and you don't get the upgrade, it's not that the system has been unfair to you, it's that the NFTs are verifiably true. You know as a player that it's not just the developer sat in the back end making sure the lower level NFTs are constantly being cycled. And you also know that that higher value NFT, which has more financial use to you, unlocks more gaming opportunities, more cross-play opportunities, is fairly given to you. And you know that the ones you can buy in the marketplace on our C2C marketplace, playdat.com, you know they are fair and verifiably collected. And so moving it from one game to another, implementing it across this merge function, the functions of when players collect games. We've already heard about collecting swords. We've heard about collecting rare characters. It gives a level of trust that hasn't been seen before. And we think that's a really exciting way of looking at games and looking at games as they go forward, because players had a long time of seeing unfair mechanics or less transparent mechanics. And this is a very strong, compelling use case as to why blockchain gaming is a good transition and a good future evolution in our estimation.
Great, thank you so much, Ryan. And we just heard, as we just heard, we're witnessing this big shift in how art and gaming is incorporating verified randomness. So I want each of you to just comment on what we still need to accomplish to complete this shift to the mainstream kind of adoption, utilization, and what your team is working on right now that we should be looking forward to. For example, with art, who's your audience? How are you really? What are the challenges of bringing that to that audience and really highlighting VRF, or the same for gaming? And we'll start with Leif again.
Yes, well, in general, for Chainlink VRF, it's a lot about education, I guess, about the technology and the problem behind it, because a large part of the crypto community is not even aware that there is a problem with random numbers on chain. But then there are some very project-specific technology challenges, I would call it. For us, for example, it's that we are a project which works on different chains. We have several cross-chain mechanisms. For example, on our booster openings, they work on Binance Smart Chain and on Ethereum, for example. But we always do our random number generation on Polygon with Chainlink VRF. So we kind of have to bridge the random numbers from Polygon to Ethereum because of gas, of course, to make it as gas efficient on Ethereum as possible for our users, so that they don't have to pay the gas that is needed for an on-chain random number on Ethereum. And yeah, this is something I would say where Chainlink VRF could help us by making it more smooth to use random numbers cross-chain and to bridge them. And I know that Chainlink is working on cross-chain smart contract calls, for example. And yeah, that's the direction where we really look at, and where we are hoping that Chainlink VRF or Chainlink in general will build a lot in the future. Because, yeah, for our users, it's necessary that they can use the Ethereum Chain Monster NFTs within our game, which will, for example, work on Polygon or on Binance Smart Chain. So yeah, it's this cross-chain functionality which is important for us.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Leif. And I will actually, I'll randomly go to Philip here, if you want to also comment on that with just in relation to games and how some of the challenges and things that you're looking forward to of incorporating into your games.
Sure. Yeah, there's, I think as we kind of test the limits of really decentralization as a whole when it comes to how to properly scale out these types of functionalities. And I would actually add on to that comment about, really in a multi-chain world, I feel like that's going to be probably one of the main themes of 2022 even is how do we operate efficiently and verifiably and in a trustworthy way in a multi-chain environment? How do we scale out infrastructure in a way that's sustainable for our teams? And specifically with gaming, we're looking at many transactions that are in our case on chain. So I think having trustworthy and scalable solutions to really more efficiently be able to operate, that volume of transactions is going to be key as well. So I definitely see all those as being, some of the really primary areas of interest over the next, 12 to 18 months.
Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I'll go to Barak here, and really interested to hear, what the experience is like bridging the physical and the digital worlds, and some of the challenges of that, and what we have to look forward to next.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think we face a pretty unique challenge at Strata, which is sort of communicating different things to different audiences because of sort of the difference or the attempt to bring together the fine art or traditional art audience and the NFT audience together and create something that's new, that's interesting, that's both physical and digital. And there's, as Philip and Leif said before, there is an element of, I think, educating about the problem to make it clear that or to communicate the value of true randomness and verifiable randomness, and not just implementing it to build trust in what you're doing, to build trust in your project and in the NFTs that you're minting, and as well as in your brand. And we're communicating these things in different ways. But I have to say that following the experience of working with VRF, especially because one of our key areas of focus when writing the contract for our first project was to minimize the amount of on-chain transactions and be able to build a mechanism around, let's call it implicit interaction, where time, the current block, the previous locking is all sort of the determining factor of the current canvas that you have, and these are all implemented as view functions. So this is where the VRF is the real seed of all of that system, and making it possible to build an efficient yet highly interactive and highly random system. What we're really looking forward to is basically, continuing leveraging VRF in every project that we're doing, and with the nature of the gallery, every project is unique. It's a custom contract. It's work with a new artist, but it's proven so easy to integrate with and trust in the same way that the randomness is trustworthy and verified. That I think the key challenge is really in education. What we look forward to is seeing how this sort of spreads beyond NFTs and art, and creates an ecosystem of projects that that you can trust, while they offer increasing levels of interactivity and chance and engagement.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Barak. And jumping to you, Ryan, really curious on your thoughts about this. And, we're seeing this major shift of people come over and using these games. What still needs to happen?
Well, I think we're still looking for that massive adoption game. We think of traditional mobile games in the past. You could point to things like Angry Birds as being that moment where mobile games stop being on the fringe, or not perhaps on the fringe, but less popular, and hit a real zenith. So with that comes education. We've already talked about education needed on the idea of why random fairness and fair randomness is important. We've had a lot of idea on education on concepts of blockchain as well for players. So it's this broadening knowledge base of traditional gamers and people in the collecting world for art that's a challenge, but it's one that we can make and we can reach. With PlayDAP's upcoming games, we've got Along with the Gods, which is a traditional mobile game that we've blockchain upcycled. And this introduces NFTs and blockchain concepts at an appropriate level, rather than right at the beginning needing a wallet and needing interaction from wallets and on-chain transactions. You get to know the game first, you can play the game first, and then when it reaches a point where you have these valuable characters, which would be used and generated via fair randomness and VRF, you are exposed to the blockchain aspects and the wider aspects. And so it's a natural point where you've become invested in not just the game, but in the item that you own. And the proof that that item was fairly generated by you and by the developer is where VRF comes in. It's a verifiable proof. So not only are they now looking at an item they have, they're looking at it and knowing this is my item, and this is a fair way of getting it, and this is a fair way of buying a fair item through C2C marketplace. So it's this broadening concept with traditional gamers or traditional audiences, but in a strategic manner that allows us to be very, not simple, but just friendly with the terminology. An NFT sounds scary, but what is an NFT? It's a digital item. Okay, what's that? It's your picture. It's your artwork. It's your game character. Oh, I get that. I understand that. And that's fine. And then from there, you build on more. So that challenge of education with correct behavior in terms of hand-holding and approachableness is something that the wider industry has got a good opportunity for, I would say.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ryan. And we are winding down on time here. So we can really see how something like VRF could, once people discover it and see that it's actually baked into games, is just something that people will come to expect when they when they start playing a game as something that is just automatically built in. And so we're quickly moving towards that point. We still have a little ways to go here, but each of you is really moving us there quicker. So thank you all for joining this panel. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll see you around here again.
Thank you so much, our panelists, for that interesting discussion. I think we've only begun to scratch the surface of what we're going to see with randomness in on-chain gaming and art. And this is definitely a space you're going to want to watch.